All right, I'm calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
President Clements.
Here.
Vice President Valentine.
Here.
Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Clementson.
Here.
Trustee McNow.
Here.
So I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda, so I'm going to ask for the recommended action on that.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so now comments from me. First of all, welcome to everybody to the meeting. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. I want to take this opportunity to thank Martha Upton, the Phillipstown Climate Smart Coordinator, for reaching out to the board, and Dr. Benante, and asking to learn more about our efforts to transition to electric-powered school buses. This is coming to people's awareness for many reasons, not the least of which is that there are going to be requirements that we transition to electric school buses in the near future. She was really helpful in her email. She reached out letting us know about a webinar that NYSERDA was going to be presenting about some funds that were going to be made available through the New York Environmental Bond Act. I don't know if I have that right. Then she came in and spoke with us and provided even more useful information, and we had a really very positive conversation, and I really appreciated her interaction with us and really the interaction that she was representing from other folks that she's working with about that. So thanks very much for that. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Clements, and thanks for everyone's patience. We were having some technical difficulties connecting with our external auditor, and we put a lot of work and effort into managing the district's finances, which all culminates with an external audit of our school district, and tonight's the audit report. So in addition to some very important recognition, so we just wanted to make sure we were able to work through establishing some sort of connection with her. So thank you for your patience. I know there's some students and families here who I look forward to acknowledging soon. A few updates from me, just for the board. We're near the end of our fall athletics season, and congratulations to our student athletes, particularly those seniors who participated in their final home games at Haldane. I had the opportunity to attend a few of those, or who soon will, now that sectional play is upon us, and it's the culminating, or part of the culminating experience for them, or for several of them, in their athletics experience here at Haldane and playing with their classmates. And I want to congratulate them and their families as well. This past weekend, my wife and I attended the Taste of the Valley event at Glenwood. Saw a couple of you there. It's a great event that's hosted by our school foundation. Thanks to the school foundation and the many community members who were in attendance, including several of our teachers, as well as our administrators. I did want to draw the board's attention just for a moment to a letter that I shared with the community late last week regarding the Hamas attack on Israel, as well as my follow-up message to staff today. So if you are able to check your inbox sometime later this afternoon, you will have seen that. I appreciate the recent conversation that Peggy and I have had with our teachers union leadership. And I think we were able to process what transpired over the course of last week and what we need from each other when times like this emerge. It was a very healthy dialogue. I didn't know if there's anything more you wanted to share.
Yeah, it was, one of the things I wanted to comment on, it was really clear to me the level of concern that these teachers had, both about wanting to engage students in a helpful and supportive way. A level of concern about doing that, but also doing so in a way that really gave them time to process and learn and be the most helpful they could be. And I found it really very impressive.
Yeah, so
that level of commitment.
Just to speak to it, I think respectfully, things occur. First of all, when our staff goes home on the weekend, there is somewhat of a message we send to try to tune out some of the schoolwork that comes to be with your family and be with your friends. That's important for their well-being, and same for our students as well. But things occur, and sometimes we find ourselves where come Monday, or in this case Tuesday, because it was a long weekend, something transpired over the weekend that we know strikes at the core of our student or our staff's identities, and there's a need to at least just be able to speak to it and to acknowledge it as community members. At the same time, our thinking, depending on how we all process in different ways, our best thinking usually comes in the days that follow after we've had some space to process that. So on one end, we want to establish with our staff that it's important to acknowledge events such as these when they occur. It's important for our kids, it's important for our families, and it's important for them as community members to do so. At the same time, we get the fact that it's going to take a few days to really find the space to constructively engage with our kids in a developmentally appropriate way if there's a call to do so. So I thought it was a really healthy discussion. Lastly, it's the time of the year where we step back, albeit briefly, to acknowledge our Board of Education. It's School Board's Appreciation Week. You're all volunteers committed to governing our local public school, keeping it strong and viable in a dynamic time in our world. I know I speak on behalf of our community in appreciation for your commitment. Each of you are here for the right reasons and work effectively as a governance team, something that we really pride ourselves on, especially here at Haldane. I appreciate your candor, your humility, your constructive criticism, and at times humor in supporting the work that we do to provide the children of our community with an exceptional public education. You pour a lot of time and energy into your service, and with that, we have a small gift for you. Peggy, would you mind unwrapping the gift so you can see my play on pour?
Yes.
And for the audience, thank you for all you pour into Haldane.
Yes.
And there's a photo of pancakes there. Small gift.
Can't think.
Any guesses?
No.
I actually know what it is.
Gabe, what do you think it
I'm
is?
guessing what it is.
Possibly maple syrup is a guess from the...
Based
Magic
on the
8 Ball
shape, I was
says.
predicting
You
nice
got it,
maple
maple
syrup.
syrup. But thank you for
From-
your service.
From a local
Yes,
store, yes.
yes, absolutely. Locally procured maple syrup. But thank you. There's also a certificate there for your refrigerator that you can hang up at home. A few of those we're going to give out tonight. And I would just ask the audience to join me in applause in recognition of our board member service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Megan, for helping to coordinate the gifts, as always. With that, we'll keep the recognitions rolling. If I can ask Mrs. Sniffen to come up to the microphone, and I will join you, Julia. We have a few students who we'd like to recognize this evening.
Well, we can do it in whatever order you want, but the agenda has our student advisors next.
Follow the agenda.
Not heard anything. It's always to follow the lead of the district clerk. My apologies. We have a few student representatives who are here with us this evening. Ruby Poses, Student Council President, and Gabe Lunin-Pack, Senior Class President, who, you tell me at this point.
I was just going to say, they're going to report on September and October. Next month, obviously, will just be November, so it might be a little bit longer.
No problem. Gabe, Ruby, who would like to start?
All right. See how. Hello. All right. So the start of the Haldane academic year marked a bunch of new clubs, a great increase of membership in long-standing ones as well. So the ski club had its first annual meeting last week to discuss the big overnight trip during February break, as well as hosting its 2023 and 2024 elections. Apart from that, the relatively new Habitat Revival Club has had its membership soar recently, and its members meet after school to clear out school property of invasive species and are doing a great job making our local biosphere healthier. Furthermore, they are working on planting a new pollination garden and preparing for a hiking trip. Apart from those, senior Matthew Nechamkin started a GeoGuessr club, which quickly became infectious around the school. On Fridays during the lunch, you could see under and upperclassmen alike meeting to play GeoGuessr, and you could even see teachers, administrators, and maybe even Miss Sniffen joining students in a fun stress reliever, which also helps geography skills. Furthermore, the debate team is hosting a scrimmage after school on Friday, October 27th, and schools Poughkeepsie and Arlington are expected to come to the high school and partake in some friendly discourse, which is great. Another club hosting on the topic of debating is the Haldane Model UN team, which is preparing for their trip to the University of Connecticut to role play as the UN in different important historical and current event topics. This trip has been a tradition for the Haldane Model UN, with last year being a huge success, and actually 2 people here today went, me and Trey over here, and we're planning on going again. So students can either be in committees discussing the World Health Organization, the Commission on the Status of Women, or even go back to ancient times to learn about the Roman wars. Members of the Model UN Club have been working hard to prepare for this, fundraising using a jelly bean website, which sells jelly beans, and you can send that link around the school. If any of you guys see it, please support. They've also been researching about their countries, learning about different reliable sources to use, as well as learning different Model UN jargon and parliamentary procedure. Like many other clubs this year, our Model UN team has seen a great increase in its members, as over 10 freshmen have joined. And this is the first year for Haldane's Model UN under its new advisor, Mrs. Secor, and we're all excited for a great year. So as parents of any senior now, college application deadlines are also rapidly approaching. So the first deadline for many southern early application schools was this past Sunday, and many other schools around the country, early action and early decision deadlines are November 1st. Since the academic year started, students have been working tirelessly with faculty to prepare for these college applications. Since last year even, students have been tasked with finding teachers to write recommendation letters for them, and many math teachers have also graciously helped students practice for standardized math tests such as the SAT or ACT. Over the summer, students were also given senior questionnaires which pertain to their college goals, extracurricular activities, as well as their personal strengths that they'd like to further have highlighted. So last week, Haldane hosted the new adapted PSAT for 10th and 11th graders, as well as the SAT for seniors to take, and seniors who didn't take that SAT had an opportunity to take college visits or join our English teachers in a Common App essay writing workshop to prepare their essays for applying. If you were to pop your heads into this workshop, you would have seen students diligently working on essays from personal statements to supplementals, and you could have seen some of our many student athletes working on their committing to various colleges. This marks the second college workshop that students have had the opportunity to attend, the first being a few weeks back with Ms. Cochin and going over resume building. I speak for all the seniors when I say that as much as this process is tedious and we are looking forward to getting it over with, we are incredibly grateful for all the help that our teachers and faculties have put into it, who go above and beyond daily. Sorry, that was really long, but thank you.
That was great. That was fantastic. Actually, I have a question.
Hey,
I have
Gabe,
a question.
just a
Sorry.
quick question. Our board members may have questions for you. Yeah, go ahead.
So you said the new clubs come, and that's great, but you said that you mentioned that there was a growing membership in some of the clubs. Do you have any idea, like, why? It sounded like that was pretty dramatic. Do you have
so
a sense of why
honestly,
that might be?
at the club fair, I was expecting, so I was with the Model UN club, so I can't really say for anything else, but I was expecting like 2 or 3 people to show up like they did last year, and we had, I think, 15 initial people write their names down, which was crazy and totally unexpected. But what we didn't expect was after the first meeting, people are sticking with it, and more people, ton of freshmen, ton of sophomores are coming by that we weren't expecting to see, so it's great.
That's great. That club has had some real success, so it's not surprising.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
super fun, and as I said already, we're looking forward to our trip, and hopefully we're going to have another day trip after that in the spring.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Gabe?
Nothing.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ruby?
Also, I would just like to add that the Model UN Club did give out candy to promote new members. Yeah, so that might have added to that. But during the week of September 17th to September 23rd, the high school celebrated Spirit Week leading up to our homecoming games. We had Color Wars theme days, Spirit Day, and Pajama Day. We celebrated the upcoming games planned for that weekend, including the Friday night football game and Saturday boys and girls soccer games. The seniors obviously dominated all the activities and had the best float with a real-life Santa from the North Pole, me. During the pep rally, both soccer games were postponed due to inclement weather. While both teams were super upset about this, we all came together to support the football team in their Friday night win over Tuckahoe. Before the football game, we brought back the parade from the depot to the school where the band and chorus performed and students showed off their school spirit. In the following weeks, the tennis team's season ended with a record of 7 wins and 5 losses and sent senior Ellen O'Hara and 8th grader Ellie DeBroff to sectionals to play in singles matches. The boys and girls soccer teams concluded their regular season and head into postseason with records of 9-6 and 6-7 respectively. The football team is still going strong with a record of 5-1 with 2 games left in the regular season. In addition to all the festivities surrounding our sports teams, the senior class also united through their kayak trip and senior scoop. During our kayaking trip, many of our seniors took an accidental dip into the Hudson and bonded with their classmates. This was a really memorable experience as we all made the journey soaking wet from the river to Mayor's Park for our picnic. The senior scoop was another very successful, enjoyable, and safe tradition that the seniors got to experience this year. As Gabe previously discussed, the Model UN Club will be taking a trip to Yukon. Similarly, the criminology class will be taking a trip to the Greenhaven prison on October 25th. This trip has returned after a few years so that students can go to Greenhaven, a maximum security prison where the students will go to learn about the people who are there and their experiences. The only difference is that this is not an overnight trip. Greenhaven is home to many famous criminals, including Arthur Shawcross, Lucky Luciano, and Andre Rand. Students are super excited about this trip, and there's lots of buzz about it in the hallways. Many of the students in these classes have the opportunity to take this trip, and most of them are upperclassmen. This is important because most of these students are likely taking these courses as electives or because it's something they're super interested in or will help them future along the road. This is a super cool and unique experience that they have that will give them an idea of what their paths might look like if they continue down a career path relating to criminology, criminal justice, or sociology. Speaking of cells, our phones have new homes within the classroom. Gabe and I were previously interviewed about our new phone policy by the Highlands Current and published in the paper. We spoke about how our phones in their new designated rooms in the cell motel help to keep us more focused. In almost all of my classes, I've noticed how my peers are much more engaged than they have been in previous years. When teachers ask us to discuss a topic or share ideas with our neighbors, this would have been a time in the past where I could take out my phone, check my texts, maybe respond to my mom, or snap my friends back. But now I actually talk to the people I sit next to. I know it might seem crazy to not be on your phone while half listening to someone talk at you, but believe it or not, sometimes the things they say are kind of interesting. This year I've not only learned more from my teachers since I'm not distracted by my phone, but I've learned from my classmates. I've heard all about my peers' post-high school plans. I've heard about what they did the previous summer, how their weekends were, and some crazy experiences that they've had that I'm actually quite jealous of. This topic wasn't necessarily meant to be a deep subject, as all I was really told to talk about was our new phone policy, but it's really had a profound impact on our students, especially me. And this has really made me think. Last year, I was ready to graduate, watching the seniors leave. I was ready to make new friends and stop seeing the same few faces in the hallway. I was jealous of them when they got to move out to a new beautiful place and meet new people. But now when I think about it, I actually get really sad. I know this is supposed to be connected to our new phone policy, but I'm getting there. My point is that now that I'm not on my phone every few moments, I'm able to engage more with the people around me. I've learned that some of these people are actually interesting and not just side characters that I see in the halls, and they have really interesting and unique stories and experiences, which I think really makes Haldane Haldane. At a big school, there's obviously so many people and likely way more combined experiences than all of us at Haldane. However, they likely don't connect with one another the way our student body does. Not only was I jealous of the seniors for getting to meet new people, but they got to move to a new place. They got to have better coffee shops and restaurants, maybe a more scenic place to live, but I really don't think it gets better than Cold Spring. Not only has our new phone policy limited my phone usage in class, but it's rid me of my habit of reaching for my phone to check Snapchat or make a TikTok every free second. I've really been more able to take in the world around me and appreciate my last few months that I have here. So while this was about our new phone policy, yes, I do think it was successful, and I think that personally it has had a significantly greater impact on me personally than our faculty and staff would have thought. That is all.
Wow. Ruby, I appreciate your reflection on the change in cell phone policy. Would you, do you think your classmates would agree or feel similarly as you?
I think some of them would. I know that like in most of my classes, like you can see like the cell motel is clear, so you can see like whose phones are in it and whose aren't. Mm-hmm. And like even if students aren't putting their phones in it, like if they're on their phone in class, teachers are going to notice and they're going to take it and put it away. So that's kind of not really an option, even if they do keep their phone on them. Mm-hmm. But I think like I've talked to some of my friends about it as it was having them reread this, and they were like, yeah, I agree. Like I haven't really been reaching for my phone as much like when I'm out with my friends or like whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more than just me, but that was really much just my perspective.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions for Ruby? Oh, sorry, before you leave the stage. Thank you, Ruby. Mrs. Shields, now, yep, okay. Mrs. Sniffen, please come on up to the microphone. I've got the clear for Mrs. Shields.
First, I must
Thank you.
thank Gabe and Ruby, and there's always a little humor when Ruby steps up to a microphone, so we've learned that. I have the distinct pleasure of recognizing 5 students. Unfortunately, 2 of the students could not be here tonight. One is taking a college level course that she could not miss via Zoom, and the other is down in, I believe, Manhattan at dance class. So I'm going to start with Helena Kottman. As you know, every once in a while, we have a student here who is a national merit semifinalist, which means they're in the top 1% of students taking the PSAT in their junior year. So Helena Kottman was in the top 1%. She is considered a semifinalist, and she will be moving on in the process. Helena has a big portion of work to do herself, which I checked the portal today, and it is finished. And we as a school district have until October 30th to finish our portion, and we're just about done with that. So she will continue into the next level of competition for scholarship and for academic award money. In addition, we do have Amelia Cupper, who is down in the city dancing this evening and is not here, but she was recognized as a National Merit Rural Small School, which students who are recognized in this category are in the top 10% of students who take the PSAT or the NMSQT. They also must have a GPA of over 3.5 and have AP scores of 3 or higher in 9th and in 10th grade. So here tonight, we have 3 students who fall into this category. And the first is Gabe Lunin-Pack. In addition to the academics, just Gabe, as you already heard, is in Model UN, is in debate, is on the baseball team, is, I learned today, in Putnam County Youth Court, which I did not know he was Putnam County Youth Court with his shirt on. But the second student is Trajan McCarthy. Trajan is on the soccer team. Trajan is on the baseball team. Trajan is involved in Model UN. And I'm sure many other things that I can't think off the top of my head. And finally, we have Julian Schwartz. Julian, who again is involved in multiple clubs and activities in addition to being on the varsity football team and on the varsity lacrosse team. Julian Schwartz. I got everybody.
Now, I believe we're prepared to go to the audit next, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
That is what's next on the agenda.
Okay. So if it's okay, if we could just take a brief recess while we're setting up for that, make sure the technology's okay, and if we could snap a photo with Gabe and Trajan and Julian, and then we'll come back and begin with our auditors. And this would also be a good time, unless you want to stay for the audit, you're more than welcome to stay for the audit report for our kids to also transition out. But congratulations once again to our students. Okay, Mrs. Sniffen.
Giant shoulders.
You're like trying to look smaller. You're like, yeah. What do I look like from the side? There we go. What if we should turn it down this way?
That's good. Kylene, can you just check 1, 2, 3? Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you comfortable with listening to Kylene through the computer audio?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to get feedback on
Yeah.
this
fine.
one.
You may want to pin her
Correct.
so she always shows up. You think I know that?
Advanced zooming.
Yeah, no. Pin. Try pin.
Yep.
And see if that.
Oh, actually have her speak. She might come on.
You gotta pin her.
Or maybe spotlight for
Yep.
everybody.
You gotta pin her up there. You gotta pin her on that one, John.
Wow, there's lots of devices.
Yeah, pin her
here.
on that one.
Or
There we go. There we go.
there we go. Look at that. Big.
You had the right idea. The wrong computer.
Yes. No, number 2.
No, that's all right. There's like 22 actually.
All right.
There's like 22 computers happening right now. We're in the matrix.
We are, indeed.
It's all a
We're all set?
I think so.
Okay. Kylene, I hope you can continue to hear me okay. Welcome. I know you're here to present our external audit report, and the stage is yours.
And
No,
that's a no.
she doesn't hear us.
Is your mic on, Megan?
No, it's not showing me my screen anymore.
Nah.
I'm just gonna message her that we're working on it still.
Yeah. Thanks, Peggy. Well, she's certainly unflappable. She hasn't noticed.
You feel like a hostage situation? Should we write?
Yeah.
Failed to detect your microphone.
Okay, Kylene, can you hear us now?
Yep, I can hear you.
There
All
we
right,
go.
we are ready for you to start.
Okay, I'll get right into it then. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kylene Fitsik. I am an external auditor working up with the Bonadio group and the manager on the school district's audit engagement. We recently completed the audit and went over the reports in detail with your audit committee, and I'm here tonight just to go over the summarized version of the audit results and answer any questions that any of you may have. First, I'd like to thank Catherine and the business office for all of their assistance during the audit. They were well prepared, as always, and very timely and responsive to all of our audit requests to ensure a smooth audit. There are four deliverables that we provided to you. The first is your financial statements. The second is your audit of the extra classroom financial statements. The third is the required communications letter. And the fourth is the management letter. So first, to start out with the school district's annual audit of the financial statements, that includes the independent auditor's opinion on the financial statements. We issued an unmodified opinion on your financial statements. An unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can give you. The other audit report that is included in your overall financial statement package is the government auditing standards reports. So this report requires us to gain an understanding and report on your internal controls over financial reporting. We were pleased to say we noted no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies in the financial reporting over internal controls. The other part of that report is your compliance with laws, regulations, and grant contracts. That non-compliance could lead to a material financial statement impact. We noted one financial statement finding, that the general fund unrestricted fund balance slightly exceeded the 4% fund balance limitation. The district is limited to retaining 4% of the school budget and the unreserved and unappropriated fund balance. And again, you're slightly over that limit at 4.08%. Thirdly, we issued the school district's annual audit of the extra classroom financial statements. We issued an unmodified opinion on those financial statements as well. And then lastly, we issued the school district's management letter. During the audit, we became aware of other matters that are not necessarily necessary to report in the required reports. However, we presented them just for your consideration and recommendations and improvements for the future. The management letter's focus was on the extra classroom clubs. So that's a very high-level review of your audit results, and I'm open to any questions that any of you may have.
My question is actually sort of for John and Ezra, like what were the kinds of, like what were some of the the conversation that the audit committee had? Was there anything that you all noted or?
Nothing significant. I think the major thing that I was going to point out, Kylene, I don't know whether you can hear me sort of across the room. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, fantastic. I'll use my diaphragm. I think it was the change in how the opinion was addressed for the extracurricular clubs from last year to this year. And am I correct in remembering that there was indeed a change of how you approached that?
Yes, yep, we changed the opinion in the extra classroom financial statements from before it was qualified, and we presented that as an unmodified opinion this year, and instead putting the recommendations and some of the extracurricular club, a few findings that came up in the cash receipts and the club ledgers. So that was the difference in reporting this year, that rather than giving a qualified opinion, we gave an unmodified opinion, and then we put that into a management letter this year for extracurricular clubs.
Okay. And a little bit of, I'm going to say this, and Kylene, correct me if I'm remembering correctly, a little bit of color that was useful for me in this conversation. So this is about the dozen club accounts, plus or minus, that run and accrue money. I think the boosters are probably in there. The theater arts is each class has a grade, has a club in high school. A number of the actual clubs have some sort of cash accounts. So that's for context for anybody who's paying attention at home. What was color for me, which was useful to know, was that it seems that Catherine has procedures to recognize and report on cash that comes in, where and correct me if I'm wrong, where the interest in potential upgrading is at the individual club level. And you can sort of understand, I can have sympathy for people who are teachers or parents, whoever is the club administrator and the club treasurer, not having a great journal process. Yeah. That was what I understood to be the major gap. Am I remembering correctly?
Yes, that is correct. With the club ledgers at, again, the club level, but everything at the business office level, everything was recorded there.
Okay. So that gave me a little bit more sort of like, okay, got it. I understand how this happens. I understand that this will probably never be exactly where we want. We're also not dealing with magnitudes of money that are, I think, collectively more than $60,000 total across all those clubs. So that, yeah, fine, great.
And so was that, sorry to go to my mark. And so is that the rationale then from switching what's typically been a qualified to an unmodified, right? Is really focusing more on what the district's practices are, recognizing that the district has really little to no control over all the various different extracurricular funds.
Exactly, that's spot on. In addition to add on to that, when GASB 84 was implemented, which was moving the extracurricular monies into the miscellaneous special revenue funds, that moved it from it being, outside of the school district's governmental funds and brought that inwards to be part of all of the school district's monies. So with that being said, it's now our firm standard practice for all school districts is to give an unmodified opinion for the extracurricular clubs, just because therefore it would be in alignment with the opinion that we're giving to the overall school district's financial statements, and then instead have it be more focused on the internal controls and how to, tidy up the books and get things, recorded better. But from a risk standpoint, very little risk. We're not dealing with a lot of cash when it comes down to the extracurricular.
That makes it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's definitely a change in sort of what's happened over the years, but it makes a lot of sense and really reflects what we as a district really have control over.
And going beyond that, the conversation that was had in the audit committee, I mean, you can tell that Catherine and the business office are doing actually a very good job.
Yes.
So, I mean, you need to realize that, like, that meeting was not brutal. It was a pretty good meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, they're doing great. This is why. And so it's nice to see that. Usually, you're always concerned with large, when you're talking about large government entities and when those audits come through and everything's solid. That's great.
Which is actually, I mean, I think it's for folks who don't follow from year to year the external report from the audit committee, I think it's worthwhile to really raise the fact that that's been the case as long as I've been on the board, right? There's been this extracurricular class fund, there's always this kind of weird stuff with it. There's always some issues, like a little bit that we can't really control related to the cafeteria funds. But like overall, the district, gets these very, it sounds not very significant, but these, strong unmodified opinions and a lot of really positive feedback about the internal controls that are in place, as well as really very positive feedback from the auditors about how well organized the business office is and how cooperative the folks are and how really easy it is to work with Haldane, which I think all that really just reflects, really well on what, Catherine's now overseeing. And
I would just, as you're saying that, I was thinking about it. It's probably one of the really good examples of, as we think about self-assessment and superintendent assessment at the end of the year, Phil was sort of the first person to say, I consider exceeds things that continue without me being here. And now that we've had a change of administration within the business office, this is obviously a cultural norm of excellent processes and procedures with the business office as reflected by the audit that continues regardless of who, and that's exactly what we want sort of in everything. But it's a great example of what should exceeds expectations.
yes. Well, and sustainable with a lot of hard work and
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
intelligent leadership of that office.
Yep.
So
Thank you. Done.
Well,
Done.
thank you. That's there.
Go out and
She's
get.
still here.
All right. We lost her on one.
I'm sorry.
Do we have more questions for
All
Tim?
right. We
Any
got
other
her.
questions? Or?
No.
I don't think so.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Everyone have a great evening.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Kevin.
for your patience and with us making sure this could happen tonight.
No, it happens very often with technical difficulties and all of this, so we're used to it over on our end. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Kylene.
Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you all. Catherine, first audit?
Second audit.
Full hat. There it is.
We boiled
It's all
down
news.
months of your work to 10 minutes.
Congratulations to you and the department for wrapping it all up. I know a lot of effort goes into that behind the scenes. And thank you for your reflections, board members. Megan's going to get us set up with the next discussion item, so we're good. Oh, that was quick, so I'm going to center. Josh, Julia, and I are going to take the lead on this one. So we each have respective parts to this overview and presentation. As the board's aware, we spent a considerable amount of time last school year and really through the summer reviewing our our school master schedules, both at the elementary, middle, and high school. This has come up several times over the years. Last year, we prioritized engagement with the staff on this matter with a few goals in mind, which Josh will speak to. And just to set Josh up before he comes up, I think we see our responsibility really as having 1 foot kind of rooted in where we are and managing, obviously, the day-to-day and what's going on campus, but also kind of 1 foot planted, if one can be, in the future, or at least one eye towards the future, and having a sense of what shifts or changes may be necessary for Haldane to keep being Haldane, or to grow a program in any way that we can in the future if there's an opportunity to do so. So as we look out, we see a few variables that are going to impact us as a school community, which really set the context for us examining our master schedules. And with that, Josh is going to give you some background information. Julie will dive into some technical details related to our scheduling, and then I'll come back and share with you what our recommendations are for the next couple of years. So Josh, if I can turn it over to you, and I'm just going to take a seat for a few minutes. There is no clicker. Megan's going to click. Megan, do that for us.
Good evening, everybody. So as Dr. Benante stated last year, myself, the building principals, and Dr. Cation got together a group of educators, about 14 of them that were representative K-12 throughout the district, to engage in a series of conversations around the master schedules that existed at each of our 3 buildings, and really talk about the pros and cons of each of those. And the conversations themselves were extremely worthwhile, because I think one of the early things that we talked about was gaining a K-12 perspective. And so high school level teachers trying to really understand what an elementary schedule looks like, and vice versa. And then within those, you have all these subtleties around world language, or people who are K-12 or shared staff. And I think what the committee walked away from was a really better understanding of how K-12 our district functions, from the moment of each bell rings to the end of the day, and the complexities of what go into that. So as we said last year, we got together, we met a few times during the year to really examine what those were. We did engage a scheduling consultant early on in the first couple of sessions. That individual served as some expertise in working nationally and regionally with other school districts around constructing different schedules. Acted as a nice sounding board for some of us as we debrief some of this information against them, to have something to push back. And also during the time that the committee met, it was just nice for us to be engaged in what people were saying and not necessarily have to worry about writing down what they were saying. So it was another check that way. At the conclusion of those, probably around February, the administrative team worked together with all these recommendations, with all these kind of ideas, and came up with some key recommendations. So, Ms. Shields, So I think on the onset, we wanted to establish a purpose of this committee, and this was communicated every single time our committee got together, and I think it was further communicated. I gave up some board reports throughout last year as we went through this, but the real purpose of the committee was to examine what changes, if any, could be made to our 3 building schedules to improve the educational experience of our students. And so as you go through or hear some of this, I think at the forefront of everything was, how does this impact students? How does this create better opportunities for our students? And that was the charge of the committee to look through. One of the things we really dived into what is working well with our current schedules. And just in case stating the obvious, each building operates on a different schedule here in Haldane. I just say that out loud. And so when we took a look at what those strengths were, these, not all of them, but I would say embodied pretty much the prevailing themes that went through. The very first was, the extended blocks of time for teaching and learning. And so this obviously is taking place at the elementary school in ways, but particularly also at the high school. And as you'll hear around in the beginning parts of the middle school, you have this extended 50 to 55 minute block of time that is really research based. And when the high school and the middle school adopted their current schedules now, there was a tremendous amount of intentionality behind that. And so, not wanting to revert back to a 41 minute, even though our high school and middle school schedule has one out of the cycle of a straight 41-minute. The idea was that having these 50 to 55-minute blocks of time was a real positive, and that was really echoed through pretty much every educator that was on that committee. Second was this unit lunch concept for both middle school and high school. This idea that they are off altogether for lunch allows for a tremendous amount of flexibility for things happen, like clubs happening at the high school and the middle school during that time, ability to find teachers in different ways. So that was also seen as a really strong positive. There's this embedded additional support into the regular schedule via what we call the 10th period, particularly at the secondary level. This is something that continues to be an area that our educators see as a tremendous positive of the schedules at the secondary level, this idea of an embedded opportunity to have kids stay after school and meet with teachers for an extra help type of thing. But it's more than just extra help. It's almost normed within the district, as this is exactly what that's for. And the idea is that students are going there en masse during this time. So that the concept was we didn't want to lose that ideal. At the middle school, we're talking about kind of block scheduling in humanities and math and sciences, teaming model, which goes beyond just sharing a group of kids, but also the ways that teachers interact with each other at the middle school to plan interdisciplinary ideas and have access to students at that time was also seen as a great strength that we had. And the current elementary schedule provides flexibility in the extended learning time that's offered. So it's a summary of kind of our strengths there. Ms. Shields? Going on to a summary of current issues. Again, the list was a little more exhaustive than this, but we've kind of boiled down to some of the key ideas. One of the things that happens with the three different schedules is there's limitations to run certain programs based upon because we share staff between buildings. And these staff members are navigating different building schedules. For people who build master schedules, you want as many scheduling opportunities as possible when scheduling. And when you share staff in certain places and they're on different building schedules, it locks those staff into certain places, therefore decreasing the amount of scheduling opportunities that happen, and it has a pretty large ripple effect, which the principals can talk about. There were inconsistencies in how our students access music education. So currently, elementary ensemble students meet outside of the regular school day. They need to come before the school day in order to engage in that. And so that was seen as something that was an issue in terms of scheduling, not only for the building, but probably for families as well. If you're a related service provider and or you're a K-12 teacher, which speech, OT, and PT are, you're navigating three different schedules in many different ways, which limits the ability to have consistent opportunities in which you're scheduling with kids, which transfers to kids not having a certain schedule to go by in some ways. And so these schedules in many ways are created every single week. Our service providers are recreating schedules, recommunicating those schedules out to both students as well as faculty as well. Core classes such as math, science, ELA, and social studies in the middle school, they engage in the morning in those 55-minute class periods, where in the afternoon, the classes such as foreign language, our DCI, and electives are locked into 41-minute class periods every single day. And so where those, they meet longer, it's not necessarily by a tremendous amount, but it does not afford themselves the same opportunity, which was on the previous slide, which was noted as being a strength of our schedules, this extended learning block of time for kids. Specials in the elementary schedule, such as PE, library, art, and general music, currently meet on a Monday through Friday schedule. So one of the inequities here is many of our school holidays fall on a Monday. And so if you're a student in your class is scheduled on a Monday, you are consistently missing that class more often than other classes. It's repeated on other holidays if we have a Friday off or whatever, that same idea happens. But it's a Monday through Friday schedule, so if there's a day off, that class, essentially students are just not engaged in that class during that week. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sniffen, who's going to talk to us a little bit about what the actual current schedules look like.
So about just over 10 years ago, we developed the schedules that we're currently using. We've been sitting with them, obviously, for quite some time. When you look at why and how were these schedules created, the middle school schedule, if you look up here, you'll see period 1 is what we call a lock period. and it doesn't move, it doesn't rotate. Well, why is it locked? Why is it always 7:30? That's music. That's shared staff between 3 buildings. Elementary isn't in yet. There are other things there. There could be an AIS class, there could be PE, but it's primarily driven by the music program that needs to be locked. After first period in the middle school, you get to the core classes, which are rotating and they drop. So you have that 55 minutes of instructional time. So that's your English, your math, your science, and your social studies. And you'll notice the rotation, you'll notice the drop. So if you start at 2, period 2, 3, 4, you pick up the next day on 5, and it's just a cycle that goes through. And in the middle school, on a 9-day, which typically is a Friday, if it's a full week, you would have all of your classes. Note that lunch is locked. That's a unit lunch. When we were talking about unit lunch, middle school, high school, it's not that all middle school and high school students are eating at the same time. High school is locked before middle school is locked, but it is a locked period. So when you look at this, you see an AM and a PM, and that impacts shared staff. So there are certain shared staff that are locked in the middle school in the afternoon. So like the art teacher is locked to the middle school in one of those periods. The world language teachers are locked in the afternoon for those periods. And the reason those periods are locked is because some of the people that teach in the middle school in the afternoon also teach in the elementary school, which doesn't rotate. So if you have a PE and you're Coach C, you're locked in the afternoon because you may be teaching an elementary class at a different point of the day. So therefore it can't rotate because the elementary isn't rotating, if that makes sense. Gotcha. I think you can go to the next slide. Very similar in theory and in philosophy, but less sharing. So high school doesn't share with elementary the same way middle school shares with both. So high school rotates in the morning, 55-minute classes with a drop, and then it rotates in the afternoon. It doesn't rotate a full day. So you have periods 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning on a rotation, and then you have periods 6, 7, 8, 9 on a rotation. 55 minutes long. Yes, you then have the 9-period days. We don't only do 9-period days when it's a Friday. We just keep going. So a 9-period day could fall on a Wednesday, or it could fall on a Friday. We don't stop that. There's a few reasons why we don't rotate the full day. 1, obviously being shared staff, but 2, also being BOCES. So we have many students who take advantage of the tech program, and the tech program runs an AM program and they run a PM program. So when we build our master schedule, we need to ensure that students who are going to tech can get those core classes that they need, whether they're at the AM programming, then they have their core classes here in the PM, or vice versa, depending on when they go. One other thing with this is both schedules rotate also on a blue-white. So while you have this rotating of 55 minutes, you also have blue and white days. Some courses meet every other day. For example, band meets every other day. Chorus meets every other day. Health is an every other day class. Science labs are every other day classes. AIS is an every other day class. So that's similar in both buildings, the middle school and in the high school.
So I was going to ask, because I've never understood this. That's okay. And my children know that's fine. That's great. That's all that they're good. Like the difference between the blue A and the white, the left column blue and the left column white, top and bottom, are because you will have only other day classes in one of those slots. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So PE,
They're like,
PE is going to be blue.
smile.
Let's say PE is 1 blue. You could look up there and
Yeah.
see where is 1 blue,
Yeah.
and that's PE.
But
So
one
in some
white
weeks you
would
have
be
it
different.
3 times,
Yeah.
and then in other weeks you only have it twice.
Okay. Great. Good.
The Power School app has made this a piece of cake.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
All you do is open up your phone.
Yeah. Yes. No, I've seen that. I can attest to that.
Thank you, Julia. That's helpful. I'll summarize the recommended actions, and at this point, as we go through questions as well, I'd invite Christine, Julia, Marianne, and Josh, if there's any building-specific questions that we have that they could have further information to share with the board on, to certainly feel free to do so. So just to start, the following changes we're recommending for next school year. One, shifting the elementary school special schedule to a 6-day rotation. The schedule currently, as was summarized, is on a weekly schedule, a Monday through Friday rotation. We have more days off on Monday than any other day due to holidays and whatnot. So if you have art on Monday and you're a student who loves art, you're going to have less art than a student who has it on Tuesday or Wednesday. So shifting to a 6-day rotation would smooth that out or even it out over the course of the year. So students would have an equal amount of special time regardless of the day of the week that they had it, because it will rotate on a 6-day cycle. Second recommendation here is to align the middle and high school schedules by shifting the middle school schedule to more reflect what the current high school schedule is, which we call a pinwheel rotation. We don't need to get into that, but essentially the schedule would operate in the manner that Julia described that the high school schedule is operating. That will assist us in a few ways when it comes to sharing staff, as well as holding on to extended blocks of learning, allowing certain courses to be experienced throughout the course of the school day. So if you will, you have that tough class first period, you're not always going to have it first thing in the morning. It's going to rotate over the course of the day. That's one of the other benefits of rotating the schedule in the way that we do so really at both schools. Megan? Just to speak a little bit more to the 6-day rotation, we would likely, and there's some staffing things here that we would still have to sort through, but all things remaining the same as of now, increase student contact time K through 2 in PE, increase student access to library media in grades 3 through 5. We would have consistent instructional time in special areas across the year, as I spoke to. And then that related service component that Josh mentioned, our K-12 staff members, OT, PT, speech and language, by moving to a 6-day rotation that allows us to better align those staff who are working with our elementary students as well as our middle and high school students to deliver a service delivery model that's consistent over the course of the school year. And then there's that potential to bring chorus and band into the regular school day. Again, not quite there yet. We see the opportunity to do so, but it remains a continued focus so we can move away from this equity issue as we see it of kids having to come in early to access some of the music. We want to eliminate that. With respect to the middle and high schools, consistent instructional time for all year-long classes in the middle school. That's something that in the current design is not the case. And then we see a lot of opportunity that would avail itself should we align these two schedules. Students can take sequentially different classes in grades 7 and 8. Electives could be offered 7 through 9 and 10 through 12. And then other opportunities as we continue to work with our staff on this still to be defined. The administration has been reluctant to go too far in the idea generating before we engage our staff. We see structurally what could occur, but yet when it comes to something like electives, of course, there's a desire among our parents, well, which electives would you offer? Well, we have to talk to our staff. The opportunity will be there for them to do so, but we want to use the rest of this school year to engage our staff in some further planning around different mock-ups that we create so we can see what they're interested in teaching, and then by way of that, offering to our kids. Megan, I think I have one more. Now, there's a second key, I would say major recommendation as we examine this, and that would be to realign our schools for the 5th grade to be included as part of the middle school program and the elementary school to exist as a K-4. We are recommending that this shift take place in the 25-26 school year, so not next school year, the year after. And just to step back from this for a second, years ago, the community engaged in a process where it felt it was important to create a middle school. Haldane did not always have a middle school. We had a K-6 we had a K-12 building for many years. And then we moved to a K-6, 7, 12. But the community stepped back and engaged in a dialogue around the importance of having a designated school, which philosophy was organized around working with the middle level learner. And personally, I think that's a great idea. That's a good thing for kids and for Haldane. That's a unique period of our kids' lives, and having a school that's dedicated or around working with students at that age group is something that I think really benefits them. And I think we've seen that over the years. That being said, our middle school is our smallest school by way of student population. And we've encountered an issue even going into this school year where we see, as we have smaller cohorts of students coming through, which we anticipate there'll be more of, it puts stress, if you will, on maintaining the middle school model and the teaming model that exists at each respective grade level. So moving the 5th grade to the middle school will allow a couple of things to happen. One, it gives the middle school more students, which is good for the middle school. It also allows us to rethink how we're going to organize the teaming structure. And Megan, if you could transition to the next slide. Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention with respect to this. The teaming structure really affords a model for our staff to have to share students at a grade level or grade levels, because I'm going to get to that, to have common planning time with one another, to engage in interdisciplinary work with each other and with their students. And that's, again, something that we think provides a level of academic support for our kids, but also a level of social and emotional support that those teams are prepared to provide to our students in those grade levels. We've encouraged our staff as we've gone through this to think that in order to maintain teaming, we can do so, but we're going to have to just think of teaming a little bit differently because, again, we're going to have fewer students that are coming into our middle school over time. And this is just our enrollment projections listed out over the next 5 years here. And you can see that 5th and 6th grade combined are at somewhat going to have 116 students, but gradually work their way down to below 100 students, even as low as 83 students in 2027. Similarly, in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, you see a range of those combined cohorts there. So this would put some stress on maintaining the teaming structure, as it currently exists. But if we could think of teaming in terms of a combined 5th, 6th, and then 7th, 8th, respectively, combined team, we can still hold on to teaming and the good things that come with it for our kids and for our staff. We can expand opportunities for students potentially at those grade levels because we've given ourselves enough opportunity or enough time to plan for it and create an even more robust middle school program. Whereas if we were to do nothing, I think we would continually run up against, especially come budget time, the cohorts are getting smaller. Can we hold on to teaming? What's that mean for our middle school? And we can avoid that. And instead, we can look to enhance the middle school program over this next year if we were to use it somewhat as a planning year and think of it in that way. So I'll pause there. I'm sure there's a couple of questions and and obviously invite our other administrators up if there's any questions that are more specific to buildings.
I got a quick one.
Go ahead.
How many staff members were shared between the middle school and the high school that then becomes this impetus to do this?
I don't have that answer, but I think we can.
Off the top of
think
my
through that.
head,
Roughly, I would say 8.
Okay.
And I would just add that there's no core teachers shared between the middle school and the high school now. But I don't know if this matters. But there could be, once we're aligned. So theoretically, so Mr. Sniffen in the middle school teaches a 7th, 8th grade Model UN.
Right.
So Model UN is wildly popular for all of our kids. So maybe if we're aligned, Mr. Sniffen could teach a section he'll have a 7/8 section and maybe he'll have a 9/10 section. So we would be able to do something like that.
Gotcha.
I would just add that it's not always very many, but like as an example, the middle school and the elementary school share Kristen Spooner. Because I cannot use her in the morning, I can only use her in the afternoon. That actually sets up the entire elementary school schedule because her class then has to be in the afternoon, which forces 5th grade the 5th grade special rotation into the morning, which, because one of her students is also a 4th grader, forces the 4th grade special into a spot, which then dictates the entire rest of the schedule. So even though that's only one person, my whole schedule is based on that one shared staff person.
That's wild. Yeah.
had a question on slide 9, the benefits of a 6-day rotation in the elementary school. When we talk about increasing student access to library and media in grades 3 through 5, is that like the 5th graders do, or is that with the garden librarian?
Do you want to speak to that? Thanks, Megan.
So the proposal would be that with us shifting to a 6-day schedule, you need a 6th elective for everybody. And with us changing that frequency, we would be able to offer a 3rd PE within 6 days instead of 5 to the K2. And then we would offer a 2nd library. One would be with the librarian, and then one would be with our current structure. So we would be able to maintain that garden library program for our 3rd, 4th, 5th graders with currently Miss Llewellyn, but then add a library media focus for them as well on a 2nd day within. So that would be with current staffing with Miss Eckes that would allow us to do both parts of the program.
Thank you. And if you could just explain a little bit more about the teaming, the benefits of teaming. I mean, I understand what the benefits are, but what is the relationship between 5th and 6th grade with the combined, now 5th grade being middle school? You know, how do the 5th graders benefit? How will that change both for the students and for the teachers in terms of?
Sure. And Megan, would you mind just going back to slide? One thing just a technical piece I wanted to mention with teaming. I think it's the last slide, Megan. Next, yep. Nope, next one. That's the one I wanted to see at least. I'm sorry if I didn't say it clearly. First of all, in combining these teams, remember that our 6th grade teachers are elementary certified. So in terms of why are we combining 5th, 6th and not 6th, 7th, and maybe talk about bringing 9th down, or, there's other combinations that may come to mind after the fact that our 5th and 6th grade teachers share a common certification, and by way of that can work with the same groups of students, whereas they wouldn't be able to with our 7th and 8th grade staff. So going back to the benefits, so the teaming model is based around a core principle that these are students that are being shared by a core group of staff members, whether that be, and that exists in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade now. And that provides a level of academic support for the kids, as well as social and emotional support for our students as well. The creation of the class or the cohort as a community of learners who have 4 dedicated staff members that are working with them is something that's good for them, and it's good for our team and their work with them and their families. That structure is going to be problematic to hold on to if we don't create a structure for the teams to expand in some ways. So we're going to be faced with what we were faced with last spring through budget development, where we know we have smaller cohorts of students coming in. It's not going to happen every year, but it's going to happen. And it's going to be more consistent, lower cohort sizes. That's going to create this, I would say, pressure for us to decide, do we really need 4 core teachers to teach that grade level with incredibly low class sizes? So the way around that, and to address it, to still hold on to teaming, and then the core elements of our middle school model, is to bring 5th grade into that. That allows the 5th and 6th grade teams to share students. Granted, some students might have someone who was typically or historically a 6th grade teacher. Likewise, some of our 6th graders may, for a class, have someone who in the past has taught 5th grade, but it allows us to hold on to the base of that.
I think it's funny because it just occurred to me that this might be helpful to anyone listening, right? The alternative to a teaming structure is you have your middle school English teachers, you have your middle school social science teachers, science teachers, and math teachers. And then students can be scheduled, not necessarily one math teacher might teach both 7 and 8 math, right? One teacher might teach both 6 and 7 science, right? And so students, there's not a core group of teachers that get to know and develop relationships with that core group of students in a particular cohort. And just for a while, we've just thought that, example
too that might help.
Yeah, and what you get with teaming is the idea is that developmentally, it's these really close adult-child relationships adults that know the children, right? So that's often going to happen with teachers, but a shared group of adults that know the same shared group of students, and that this is beneficial for making decisions about and guiding the instruction and social emotional learning opportunities for students. And so it really, there's an alternative. I guess my point is there's an alternative to what we're doing that is thought to be not as developmentally beneficial for students. Yeah. I think that was helpful.
That was very helpful because you pointed out the fact that there's a core group of adults, of educators working with
Each other.
To benefit this group of middle school students that we know that developmentally, the only other time that the human being develops at that rapid of a rate is from 0 to 3 years of age.
Both cognitively and physically.
Yes, it's a tremendous time. So another way to think of a good analogy for it is, yes, it is. It's an interesting. Another way to think of it is the team approach to healthcare. So like a lay person, like if a person is diagnosed with diabetes and they go to a diabetes management clinic, at that clinic they may see an endocrinologist, their primary care, a cardiologist, and a nutritionist, and those 4 doctors they meet on that patient, and they have the same approach, and they talk to that patient as a team, as opposed to if that person doesn't go to a diabetes management clinic and they go to a separate primary care, and they go to there's separate social studies, separate primary care, separate science, they're separate cardiologists, they're separate. They may get conflicting advice. They certainly don't get the benefit of a team working in their favor the way a middle school student that goes to a school that has a teaming approach gets that benefit.
So right now, the teams exist cohesively within a grade.
Correct.
And in this future state, the teachers are going to exist cohesively across 2 grades.
Okay. Correct.
Oh, sorry. Right now, the teams exist cohesively across 1 grade.
Correct.
6th, 1 team, 7th, 1 team, 8th, 1 team. In the future, it's going to be cohesively across 2 grades, and arguably the benefit will be able to get away from super small class sizes that aren't as functional. But the teachers would be potentially teaching classes in either of those 2 grades, but yet all working with that entire group of two little islands as opposed to 3 little islands.
Right.
And following those islands for 2 years, which is actually which is also really very nice.
Yes.
That's fair.
Yes. So sometimes that's called a combined team, sometimes it's called a split team. Ultimately, that's what it is.
Okay.
That's great. Parents don't really know about that. I mean, coming into 6th grade, they have no idea. When I, tried to meet with the math teacher about math, and I got, sit down with the team. And it took a little bit to figure out. I don't know if there's a way to talk about that a little bit more at curriculum night or something, because it's great. It's amazing. And we had no idea until.
Well, and it didn't occur to me until partway through this conversation that that's sort of how we've done it for a while, but it might not be the rationale behind that might not be apparent. Because the same thing happened with me. I remember the first time there was a meeting with Pete, I was like, what are these, and I even studied adolescence at the time, but you could imagine there's a little even something that just goes out to parents and really explains the rationale behind this. But anyway, partway through I realized, this isn't how people do it everywhere, and there's a rationale why we do it this way. And I think the other thing I wanted to say is I can, in a bigger school district and in a bigger school, you could imagine that some people might wonder about moving 5th graders into a school structure that's 6, 7, and 8. I don't think that's personally, I don't think that's a problem. I mean, there's some folks that really advocate for K-8 schools, right? I mean, and again, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. There's pros and cons to all of them. But in a place like Haldane, I think pulling together 5th through 8, I think it works, especially when you're thinking about some of the issues that we're wanting to address with it. I think it's developmentally appropriate, and then I also think it's structurally beneficial.
Now, one question on labor, though. Marianne, you might be able to answer this. On your 7th, 8th grade team, your idea of sharing staff between the middle school and the high school. So now it's potential that you have a 7th, 8th grade team member who is now going to be teaching an elective in the high school. So how would that impact scheduling?
That's the beauty of the aligned schedule, right?
So that's why the first step, that's the rationale behind the first change being aligning the schedule. Because we did talk as a team about making both of these changes at once. And then it was decided that it's a large change to align the middle school and the high school schedule and also make the elementary schedule complementary by changing it from a Monday through Friday rotation for specials to the 6-day. So anytime scheduling is like a puzzle, and anytime you make a change to schedule, there's going to be unintended consequences. So we believe that it is the best thing to do to implement, work on it this year, implement one of those mock-ups that rises to the top that we work on this year. Next year, work out whatever issues may arise that from making those big changes, and then make the school reconfiguration. So that's the so the schedule won't be a problem once the middle and high school are aligned. The teachers will be on the same schedule. I think if you're talking about like preps, it actually will ease preps. I'll give a world language example. So right now, because our world language teachers are locked, so that we have to have 2 teachers teaching 7th grade during 8th period and 2 teachers teaching 8th grade during 9th period. Those teachers can't teach at the high school. So theoretically, if we're aligned and we can then have one Spanish teacher that teaches all the Spanish 7 sections, and those sections are typically larger than our core classes. They could be 25, 26, 28, which is a large class for Haldane. But we could have. Yes, it is a very nice thing to be able to say. And we could have now 3 sections of Spanish 7 that are, maybe 17 and 18 students, because it frees, since all the teachers are now on the same schedule, it frees us up to be more flexible with how we schedule them. And of course, we will always be careful to be alerted to how many preps we're giving any one teacher, because teacher satisfaction is important. So it would actually eliminate preps for our language teachers. So.
I conceptually love the idea that it creates some permeability between upper middle school and high school in terms of elective and teacher flow. I think that's really cool in terms of the other things, additional opportunities to be defined, right? So some of that elective 7 through 9, or that other things you could do once you do the schedule alignment, I think is really interesting.
That's a good point. That 7-9. That 7-9 concept is attractive. Yeah. That's a neat concept for students who want to seek that type of stuff out. As a 7th grader and wants to push, but then you also have aligned in that 5th, 6th, that idea of the 2 years
right.
with this team, really looking out for these kids who are transitioning quite a bit in those years. Those are rough. What was the word? Tremendous.
Interesting.
Tremulescent.
Awesome.
Just to speak to 2 things, Peggy had mentioned that transition of 5th grade up to the middle school, larger school district, big deal. And we'll treat it as a big deal, but it's not, we're not changing the physical location, right?
I don't mean to say it's nothing.
Right. No, of course. So we did discuss this, and obviously it would necessitate an earlier start for those students. We want to be upfront about that. Because they would be aligned with the middle school schedule. But that being said, some of the other factors that may come into play that would be points of school elsewhere, we feel that we can accommodate pretty readily, given that the students will remain in the same physical location. And just to illustrate the elective piece, if all levels of staffing were to remain the same, which again would be our hope through the next 2 years in budget development. If you were to look at 2025, there's 110 students that we estimate having between 5th and 6th grade. We currently have 7 teachers working with those grade levels combined, core teachers. So the students could have math, science, social studies, ELA, probably with 6, maybe even 5 teachers there, which allows us to repurpose to 1 to 2 teachers, again, to expand elective opportunities or to be defined, as we said. So that plays out at the 7th, 8th grade levels as well. If you were to look at our current levels of staffing, move to a combined team model, we should have the ability to work with our staff to determine how we want to be flexible in providing further opportunities for our kids at those grade levels. Whereas if we didn't do the planning or didn't consider this or waited until budget development, we'd probably just be looking to address a need that's right in front of us.
Well, I think one thing we want to make clear, right? So would be a need for fewer teachers at those grade levels, but that the plans for what to do then with any, I don't want to say extra, but any teachers that aren't needed at that grade level are a couple. One, like you said, to repurpose them,
Yes.
but we may not need as many teachers, I mean, at some point, right? And people will retire, and then we can make like informed decisions about, who to, I mean, I don't think this will be widespread, but I think it's within the realm of possibility.
Sure.
That, in the past, we've had to find efficiencies to stay within the tax cap. It's going to happen
Right.
again and again and again.
Right.
And so the ways that it's another way, I guess one of the points I'm trying to make is it's another way of thinking about how the district can operate efficiently. Not that that would be my first choice, but it's a possibility.
Yes.
I think the point is that you don't want to build the bridge while you're crossing it, right?
Yeah.
So you do this. This allows you to
Then to figure out.
right.
That makes
allows you
sense.
that flexibility to really ideally provide more opportunities,
Would be ideal,
but
yeah.
to absorb hits a little better if that comes down.
Right. Right.
But that would that'd be state directed, not us. What they provide us and everything like that.
One thing in terms of our sequencing, just to begin to wrap up the conversation for tonight. So as you know, we were originally scheduled to present this to the board in September. We did not. We had some other presentations that we were going through. So that being said, we didn't hold up our planning in terms of communication. So this has already been put out and shared with the community as proposals or recommendations that the administration's made. We've met with our PTA leadership. I think Josh alluded to, we've circled back to our teachers who are part of the committee to inform them of the recommendations we've made. We've put it out to all staff at this point. So unfortunately, the board's the last group to have the presentation, if you will, but we're now sitting with this. So a lot of information has been shared. Got some good feedback and questions from you. Our parents had asked some good questions along the way as well as our teachers. But it would be our goal, or it is our goal, to begin to bring at least the structural recommendations to closure, to have a sense of certainty and endorsement from the board, I'd say within the next 6 weeks. I think that leaves plenty of time for further discussion if there's follow-up questions, for us to address those questions and then to move towards a recommended action for the board and the board to endorse that recommended action.
Just hearing, it's sort of astounding to hear the administrators speak about such complex scheduling issues with such fluency, right? It's clear that this is something you all have really, of course you think about it. Scheduling's always really hard, but it is really, I guess the point I want to make is it's really clear to me the really careful, deliberative thought that has gone into this process. And it's
No doubt.
appreciated.
If doctorates could be given in scheduling, Christine, Marianne, and Julia would all have honorary ones in school scheduling, because that's the depth of their knowledge. And by the way, the management that has to go on each year in just making it run, as we're talking about pinning certain, or anchoring, I don't know the language that, Locking, thank you. Locking certain sections.
I don't understand. You have
It's a lot of
you have
mental.
a pinwheel and you lock it, then it doesn't wheel. I don't.
Ask Julia or Mary.
Yeah.
Or Christine, for that matter.
schedule was based on
No.
one teacher.
Yeah, no, I know. That's.
I,
yeah.
no,
lot going
I don't want to undersell it, but the team, respectfully, Josh and our building principals and Regina, worked really hard through the summer in sitting with the recommendations that the committee had made, the strengths, the issues, if you will, and really just sitting and working through them all. So a lot of effort went into it, and the team really deserves all the credit for even being in a place where this is this makes sense. I think it's my cue to stop talking.
That's for sure.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, it's a medical emergency.
Sure.
Sometimes it just doesn't disengage, so they call it a screamer. So.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I can get the creamer part.
We'll give you a minute to sit.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, really for the work. I think it's very interesting and very promising. And, I remember when we moved to, I've always called it a waterfall schedule, but to the pinwheel schedule at the high school. Like it wasn't too long ago. Maybe 10 years, I don't know.
Ryan said it was 12.
12, okay. That, really thinking about how to create blocks, how to rotate the classes. And it really, to me, it really exemplifies this continually trying to figure out how to make something that's really quite complicated work a bit better. And very much appreciated. Okay, so we're now at the first opportunity for communication from the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. The first public comment session is reserved for comments on special presentations and active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in and state your name for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Discouraging remarks and discussion of district personnel are strongly discouraged. Although we do not engage in dialogue, please know that the board is listening. We would ask you to leave your contact information with our district clerk for prompt follow-up from the board president or superintendent. All right. So the next items on the agenda are the administrator information reports. Thank you to all of the administrators for providing those. There's really a lot of great information in them.
I had a question.
Sure,
One,
please
And
do.
obviously Regina's not here, so it might just be an email follow-up, but she has an attachment with hers talking about, yes, thank you, from the county. It's a grant, right, from the county, so are we using that?
Yes, Regina had introduced a new staff member, I want to say it's Ms. Sakamoto, who will be working
okay.
with our students.
That was the other-
And the board, I believe, had asked just for a little background on how that came to be. And we asked the county for that information, and that's what they sent in response to share. So that's the background on our support that's coming from Putnam County this year.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move into the consent agendas. The first is consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any comments? Anything? Nope.
Heard about the Canon printing, all of the printers being replaced at the tech committee meeting yesterday. Very exciting. Very
Good.
exciting.
Good.
More color printing. That's the takeaway that I got. I heard. No. Well, yes. Okay.
Not more color
Getting
printing.
Mix.
More allowed, but we're gonna still.
Oh,
Careful
that's
counting,
we're
careful
keeping that under wraps. Okay, got it.
Color printing.
What?
We're not endorsing.
We're not endorsing. Okay, fine. I think I did. That's unfortunate. Okay, but good.
And we just did the audit. I know.
So, All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
If I may.
Yes, please.
I notified the board. I know Ms. Jammin had unfortunately just left, but
she's
also no. Is she? Where is she? There you are. I'm sorry, you're behind Catherine. I know Christine wouldn't mind me drawing attention to this. That Christine has to take some time in November, and we wish her well with that. I'd like to just mention that Mr. Eric Shetter is going to be filling in as a per diem substitute administrator during the length of Christine's absence. He'll be shadowing Christine towards the end of this month just to become more familiar with the routines and procedures at the elementary school. And he will be filling in after our superintendent's conference day in November. And then we'll provide some internal coverage in the days preceding that. And we look forward to Christine's return after Thanksgiving.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so on to board committee reports. We met tonight as part of our ongoing series of meetings. Now that we've returned the audited and reviewed policy manual back to Erie BOCES, we're continuing with our read-through of all the policies. We are up through solidly into the 6,000s. No. We did all the 6,000s. I was looking at them tonight. Okay. We did all the 6,000s. That leaves the 7,000s and the 8,000s. So, and then we plan to meet then another time before the end of this calendar year. And then we start to get into budget season. And so maybe we might, I don't know, we'll decide. But we're making progress. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the appropriate, that's the appropriate comment.
The next is WPSBA update. I went to the, WPSBA held a roundtable evening for board members and last Thursday night, and I went. And I chose 2 roundtables to sit in on. One was committees, sort of continuing to think about and learn how other folks are running their committees. And the other was community engagement. And so I heard a lot of different ways that other boards are providing opportunities to engage with the community outside of board meetings. The practice we have here of not engaging in discussion during open comment is one that's shared honestly across every single board that I've talked to. So with a recognition that yes, it can often feel awkward and somewhat unnatural, but that it's the best way to run meetings, but then finding other ways to provide opportunities for people to engage. And so sometimes a couple of board members will show up early and folks can come in and it really allows, like, finding opportunities where there can be dialogue, since dialogue is not what we do, since board meetings are focused on board business. So those are some things to think about. Some folks will go to a local coffee shop on a Saturday. You can imagine doing it. You could imagine a couple of people showing up on the blacktop. So it's maybe something we want to be thinking about as we move forward.
That's great.
Yeah. And then, in November, Phil and I are going to do actually a bigger regional dinner on grading, standards-based grading.
Yes.
Standards-based grading. Yeah. Which, anyway, that I think that the New York State Regent is about to come out with its recommendations for really how to restructure how we think about what makes for a successful progression through high school. I think it's really important work. I find it really exciting because it's being driven by educators, not by external groups that are telling educators what to do. So I am actually really looking forward to the dinner, and I'm looking forward to hearing what New York State has to say. So, yeah.
Great.
So now we're moving into important unfinished business, which is the discussion related to community feedback on the Campus Master Plan Project 1.
Yeah, so I'll start just to open it up a bit, and we'll see where this goes. I think we're sitting in a bit of a unique period of time where we've adopted the Campus Master Plan, but we're deliberating on the scope of Project One to potentially present to the community for vote. And it seems to me, and I please, let's open this up, but that the board, is scrutinizing reasonably so the prospect of a 10.5, or what would equate to a 10.5% increase to the levy if all of Project One were to be endorsed and presented to the community. I personally think it would be difficult to engage the community in a discussion related to what percentage would you support. That's going to be a tough thing to discern in a community engagement perspective. I don't think just as someone who may be facilitating those conversations, the entry point really should be around that. It seems that, if anything, if we're concerned about the total cost or the impact on taxes, we should prioritize or work towards engaging the community and further discerning of the components that are included in Project One, which are of the most significant importance, and then provide that information back to the board. There's costs associated with those. We can then work with our CSR and our fiscal advisors to then get down to, well, if we don't include these components, what would the net cost be in terms of a levy increase? I see nods of heads, so it seems like maybe we're on the same page with that. One thing I'll just also reflect back to the board, we have a lot of information at hand from the initial community engagement sessions. Now, this is going back almost 18 months between the focus groups and then the survey that was administered. That could also be used as a basis in examining what we have right now in helping discern, well, what's a priority? Because CSR did some of that work on the front end before they went into organizing the development of a plan. But I also want to know if there's anything more that you would like to be delivered as it relates to this, to assist you and with me in discerning, well, of these components, which are the most important. So we have some information that I could prepare or present to you already that could be a part of that discussion. But if there's a request for more engagement, let's talk about that. So I'll stop there.
Can we talk about or see it, the unbundling of some of that HVAC work?
Yeah, so, yes. So Megan, Maggie. Maggie asked about the HVAC work, which is a significant cost. That's one of those buckets, if you will, that there's associated components to, and there's costs associated with that. Some of it, probably, I would recommend we don't move away from. That's important to replace just to keep our buildings operational. But another, and I point to air conditioning as being something, well, it's not required. Certainly, it's there for a reason, obviously, but it comes at a significant cost. There's other components as well that would fall under the category of like safety and security. Again, some that we may define as being urgent and important. We should do that no matter what. Others where we may say, you know what? Of these 7 security or safety related components, the first 5 seem really important, but these last 2, maybe not so much. So we can categorize them in that way, present them to the board in that way, along with the feedback that was collected initially. I think you'll find from the feedback, though, that was initially collected, it would be more broad, safety and security. Not camera systems, voice over IP, secure vestibules, right? That's not in that level of detail.
But that could help.
It could help.
That's going to help.
But it arguably, and now we're at the really fine point, arguably, like Altera, there's a prioritization within safety and security.
Yes.
Right.
There will be.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Alteris. We do have an audit from Alteris that they did 4 or 5 years ago that we still work with each year.
Sure.
And I will say that most of the recommendations in Project One, or the recommendations that relate to safety and security in Project One, are included in the audit that Alteris had completed and are prioritized. So we could cross-reference that to say, if we wanted to use Alteris as somewhat of an independent benchmark, again, I think we could also make recommendations just from the administration of these are the 3 or 4 that are most important that we consider.
Well, just one thing to keep in mind, you can go into these projects and you can, you could have a death by 1,000 cuts. You could be like, let's lose this, let's save this money. And then what you wind up doing is putting something out to the community that's less than what you wanted to spend, but has very little value for promoting positive educational development for children, right? Or you have a project that in scope should have been built better and has been cut so that we push problems down the road. You're going to have to pay for them anyway. So, yes, I agree, right? Fiscal conservatism is, usually, it's the way to go. But I would just say be careful about carving too much.
Right.
Because the reality is then you're going to be left with, now you're asking people to fund a bond that then doesn't, they wouldn't even know what they're paid for, and that gets wonky.
Right. Here's a personal perspective is, I'm going to assume that, okay, it feels to me like the three phases have major components and then a bunch of minor components.
Yes.
I'm going to assume for the sake of sanity that all the minor components in phase one are there because they're either super prioritized for safety and security reasons or they're a sequential element that is, okay, so most, yeah. So maybe some other ones are like, there's a door in there that I'm like, maybe we don't need to do the stairs, right? So I'm not going to worry about trying to in and out minor components from phase two and phase three into phase one. That's, I will certainly look at those, but I don't think it's useful for the entire community to get to that level of detail, and that will kill us. However, I do think we've heard along the way, and somebody can tell me that whether we're not there anymore, that there are various various groups that would want different of the big pieces of phase two and phase three sequenced differently.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to make sure that the community has a very crystal clear understanding of the big element in phase one and what the other big elements are. So everyone's clear that this is where we're going. Either speak now or forever hold your peace, or make a very strong case where you think the big elements should be swapped or replaced. I think that's a useful, that's visionary conversation rather than, are we going to get the cameras now or are we going to get the cameras next time? Right? Or are we going to fix this? And then maybe within the small pieces in phase one, there is by the way, here's all the other stuff in phase one. If you want to go through and take a look at, I think this is I agree that this piece of the Alteris or is super essential right now, or I don't. Fine, maybe that's a conversation, but that should also be clear to the community. I don't think it's useful to have people try to move things in and out of, because there's a lot of them. I mean, we're gonna end up with permutations. But I do think that super clear conversation about this is the next major step we all need to hold hands and be like, this is where we're going. Everybody, everyone's going to have their say. We're going to have this conversation. We're going to come to a conclusion. But that's the level of conclusion. It's the big pieces and maybe like in or out of these tiny little things. That's how it is.
Just to circle back to one thing, you said a question for understanding. Of the big pieces, you're right, that there are key large components, part of projects 1, 2, and 3. As part of that discussion, said, do you feel the door should be open to have some of those the discussion around some of those larger pieces coming in or out of a respective project?
Of phase 1, 2, or 3?
Project 1, 2, or 3. I thought you may have said that, but I don't know if you did.
I'm not I don't. Personal opinion, I think the thing that's in phase 1 is the right thing to be in phase 1. I want to make sure that everybody's either bought into that or understands that that's why.
Got it.
And I agree with that. So I've gone back and looked really carefully at the campus master plan recently, because I'll be honest, right? The idea of a increase in taxes that large, 10.5%, makes me very anxious in terms of, it just makes it, because I think it will be hard
It's a
for
lot
the
of
community. And I mean, I'm hearing from a lot of people that that right now their perception of it is that it would be
Well,
hard
especially on
for
top
them.
of the Phillipstown
But, pardon?
changes, especially on top
Yes.
of Phillipstown changes.
But, and I think we should definitely open up the next couple of meetings and maybe think of another couple of opportunities to create another couple of opportunities for people who have thoughts or questions to come, absolutely. But when you look really carefully at the campus master plan, they did as a much wider outreach to get feedback than I think we're going to accomplish in the next,
fair.
in meetings. And I'm not saying that those couple of opportunities, especially where people might feel strongly, are things that we shouldn't do. I think
Yeah.
there's things that we should do. But I think it's really important for us to keep in mind that anything we would even hear in those sessions, weigh it against that the number one request was the need for educational
Yes,
space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's almost less, and let me revise it. It's almost less about, I feel like I need to hear from 300 people. I feel like we need to tell 300 people.
And so that's actually, so that's
I want
kind
to
of.
make sure 300 people know whether or
Yeah.
not they respond, but I want to make very clear that, okay, this is where we are in the process. We all heard you. This is where we're going. Just remember, like, this is where we're going. So I want people to hear. I don't think we need to facilitate the level of engagement and forums that we've had, because we've had a lot of that.
Yeah.
If people want to come in and would love to, but we don't need to create multiple forums to do that. We need to create great outbound marketing or information share.
Yeah. No, and which is, I think, once we get, I think getting to the point of hearing feedback from the public,
Yeah.
to the extent that folks are ready to share that with us, but based on our own engagement and expertise on these issues, right, as well as all the collective expertise that comes through what people shared as part of the campus master planning process, I think we need to get to that place of where we think what Project One should be. And then I agree with you completely. It then becomes our responsibility to communicate about this again and again and again in as many different clear ways that we can come up with for doing that, about why these things are so critically important and why they meet needs that the community has clearly articulated. Yeah. So I think we're saying the same
I
thing.
would say a yes and to that in great improv structure would be yes, and I think we need to be clear that before, through expertise in our association and our closest to the project, we make a decision as to what's in phase one. We say, this is what's being considered for phase one.
Yeah.
The consideration phase is now.
Yes.
Come and
Yes.
know what's going on, understand it, get through the details of it. If you want to go deep, come and talk to us about, because there are a bunch of big things, and there will be multiple opportunities for public forum and just coming to the business meeting. And then, once the decision is made on phase one, absolutely, it's the why this is important, the benefits of the community. So for people who weren't paying attention, because we're going to go to a bond, that's when you sell the rationale, right?
Yeah.
Right now, it's like, what's in it?
Yeah.
Then it's
Yeah.
why.
No, because I think it's at the top of people's minds. And so I think that there will be people who are really motivated to come and share their thoughts and hopefully be at least also open to hearing the rationale behind some of these different, why some of these pieces are being considered for Project One.
I do feel like that right now the chief bit of information that people have to go on is what it's going to cost them. And it's our duty in one way or another to communicate what's coming in exchange, and to be realistic that there are going to be those individuals for whom a tax increase is just non-negotiable. And finding those people who are allied with us and who understand why it is we need to invest in the school at this time and how we go about communicating to them effectively for it. And then arriving in a place in which we can collectively be fully on board advocates for the plan moving forward. So we do have to come to some sort of agreement so that we don't have a whiff of apprehension about it. We as the board have to be full-throated in support of whatever it is we move forward with. So I think that's going to be key if we want to be successful.
And I think so many different pieces of Project One are so critically important. So, but yeah, so I think it's just figuring out exactly how to get there. Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
It's almost
When
nine.
do we want to get, when do we want to get
Plenty to
decision on
say.
phase one?
You have that look of someone who wants to say something.
When do we want to get the decision on what's in phase one?
I initially had hoped by early December, but that being said, with respect to tonight's discussion, I think it's important for us to not rush any part of the process, right? So I'm mindful of that, and especially when we're in this phase, because there are going to be firm deadlines as once we commit to a project that we're going to have to meet. So if we need to take another month or another 2 months, I think we've modeled that along the way. We when it came to the construction of the plan early on, getting more feedback with respect to some of the spaces and where they were placed on campus as reflected in the plan was something we really need to slow things down. So I think we're at one of those points right now where I'll sit with the information you gave me tonight, or what I heard tonight, try to organize a structure for how we can put some additional information from the board when those discussions will take place, as well as the information we're going to share to the community and what those opportunities will be thereafter. And that'll help me set up or recommend a timeline to the board from there.
Yeah, I also don't want us to wait too long though, because I do really think the more that I have sat with this, and the more I have reviewed really the process that took place, what's in the campus master plan, I might use some different language to describe some components of the master plan than are in there currently, but regardless, the more I sit with it, the stronger I feel that really so much of what in Project One is really critically important to the safety and security and educational experiences of our students. I should not be walking through the high school and be excited by the fact that there are chairs for students to sit in the hall to have lunch. I mean, and I was, right? There's a lot, there's some really basic things that I think there's broad agreement in the community that the high school in particular, but that the campus needs, and I think we can get there. So
I think that's right. I think I'm just cognizant that we're sort of for those of the people who have not been following along at home, although there have been articles in the paper, we're at the beginning of the momentum, right? And so let's kick off in the right way, because once we start, we're going to be going.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we don't make
I agree.
Without not informed consent, but without publicity, get to it. Whoa, that phase one is what?
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, we're going to I think collectively, certainly I could get to a position by beginning of December, to do some due diligence, figure out what, but I want to make sure everybody's there and understands it.
Yeah, and that people don't necessarily have to go read the entire campus master, So so really figuring out the ways to take it's our job to take these what's really pretty complex, multi-layered pieces of information and think about how to share them in ways that are accessible and understandable. Not everybody needs to have been part of the whole process to understand it.
It's our job, and we get paid in syrup.
We get paid in maple syrup.
You pay me in maple syrup, I'll do anything.
Drip,
I will
drip.
do anything.
So do you feel, so by the next meeting, so in terms of what's going to happen next, by the next meeting, you think that you...
I think I'll have the outline of one, you'll have some more information available for you. I'm just going to pull together some of the CS Arch materials for you to reference, the categories, the subcomponents divided into categories, that information organized in a way where you can see.
The fiscal report put everything together, but I think that's a really good starting place to start to move things around. Mm-hmm.
And then a rough outline for your feedback of how we could, how I would envision spending the next period of time, month, 2 months, 3 months, providing this information to the community in such a way that 300 people hear it.
I do agree that it would be nice to get before the end of year.
Yeah.
Just because you're going to lose. I think you lose people And then you'll sort of like be in the, I think that as a goal to shoot for, if we can get something, I think.
I like that.
All right, good.
All right, so, thank you. Thank everybody. Okay, so moving into new business, we have the CSE, CPSE recommendations. Will you please read the recommended action?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, well, so we're actually toward the end of our meeting. It's now the second opportunity for communication from the public. And then we will move into board reflections.
Just a quick thanks to Tom Cunningham and Coach Crow, who comes to away girls soccer games, which I think is fantastic. So appreciate to both of them.
Nice.
And all of the athletic teams for great homecoming and a bunch of fantastic games that have been going on. So.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I can talk about my experience at the homecoming football game. You could not move. I guess you all talked about it when I wasn't here, but still.
It was the con candy.
It was the con candy. All right. Anything else? Dr. Benante?
No final thoughts. Thank you for your patience this evening.
Yeah.
Flexibility.
I move to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
to everybody.
Peggy.